Good morning and welcome to another edition of the Daily Fix. I am your usual host and presenter, Advocate Tulo Hoyani. This morning I want to continue with my series of conversations with the accused. Let me just take you back to June the 5th. June the 5th is that day, and I'll just run through this very quickly. June the 5th was on that day when Judge Ratam Khwadling, instead of either giving Mr. Advocate Mnisi, leave or permission to participate in the Comrades Marathon, instead of either declining or accepting that request. You'll recall that Judge Ratam Khwadling went into a tirade, a verbal tirade that shocked the whole of South Africa. That went well beyond Mnisi's simple request. And it was a simple request. Mnisi wanted to participate in the Comrades Marathon. The judge would either have said yes or no. And for some of us, I've always maintained that it need not have been something that was discussed, which ought to have been discussed in open court. It could easily have been some housekeeping exercise done in the judge's chambers. But be that as it may, you'll recall that the judge went on to say very unpalatable stuff about, black lawyers in general and, black people in general. So, and causing a storm all over South Africa about those, unfortunate comments. So one of the things which caught my attention when I was talking to these informants of mine who were interacting with these accused persons was, what did they make of that? What did they make of that? The response I got was that the accused were very shocked by that kind of response. And that goes to show, like I indicated in the last edition of the Daily Fix, that one of the things that troubles the accused persons, leave the nitty-gritty of the law alone, is that the judge simply has no respect for the defense counsels. So after that incident, or that incident was another issue which they brought up to say, that clearly indicates what the judge thinks about people like Advocate Mnisi, and indeed all the other lawyers in the Senzo MEYIWA trial who are conducting their defense. So, I look at these things and say to myself, when people are accused, of course, accused persons are more often than not, likely not to be, friendly or have a disposition to the judge that is positive. Because among other things, the judge is the person who's going to either set them free or to convict them. But, as a legal practitioner, what worries me is when an accused person is worried about the processing itself. See, because what is important more than anything else is the process. It is the wheels of justice grinding forward. That is what is really important. So it is really a sad day for the administration of justice because they say that, they cite that incident, which made headlines all over South Africa and perhaps even beyond, to say that, when a judge is disposed towards your lawyer like that, yeah, one of them even used the words, he spoke in Zulu, uJudge Ratha uthathele abantu phansi, ubathathele phansi. In other words, my Zulu is not first class, but that is what we're trying to say. In other words, he looks down upon them. Ubathathele phansi, that is what it is supposed to mean. So That's a very worrying thing because, an accused person has the right to legal representation. And I suppose that legal representation is a sort of representation that he must have confidence in. He must have faith in his lawyer, that, my lawyer is here and is a respectable, officer of that court, and he'll advance my point of view, he'll advance my defense. But if he's undermined in open court like that, with those kinds of statements, it's really shocking because one of them even supposed to have said, hey, Judge Ratha is not a judge. That is what one of them is supposed to have said. So the confidence deficit is just astonishing. It is just astonishing. Or can even be said to be, so wide and shocking that these people are exhibiting. So, and it is very sad because they ought to have confidence in the process that they are undergoing, in spite of the fact that they can foresee the possibility perhaps of a conviction. They must at least have confidence in the system. But, outright statements like the ones that Judge Atta made against one of their lawyers, and by implication to the rest of the defense counsels, because Judge Atta's comments were not only directed at Advocate Mnisi, but at the entire defense and at the entire, South Africa. Remember those utterances when he said, this is the South Africa that we live in. So that is one of the things which they cite, which I'm bringing to your attention this morning, that, it was following those comments. And, those comments were simple enough for anybody to understand. Because sometimes, I suppose, when I interact with the relatives and friends, they themselves are not lawyers. So they do not engage in, the nitty-gritty of, or the dynamics of DNA and all that. Is something which is not easily understandable to them. But they say words like this that the judge uttered, need no interpretation by anybody. If they speak for themselves, I mean, in clear language, Judge Ratha, exhibited, that sort of contempt for the defense lawyers. And this has seriously eroded their defense. Thank you for watching this video. Please continue to watch this video, subscribe and share and like these videos. I am bringing you this series to give you another perspective into the Senzo MEYIWA trial. Because there are many angles to this. So we need to hear from the accused persons and to know what they think. Because that is very important. It is something that is left out. It is something that we forget about. But something which we have to know and which has to be brought to our attention. Thank you very much.